Picture this, it's October 22, 1946, across the Soviet-controlled zones of Germany. Thousands of families are sleeping peacefully in their beds, completely unaware that their lives are about to change forever. By morning, over 6,000 people will find themselves crammed into freight trains, heading east into the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. This isn't a story from a dystopian novel. This is the untold truth about Operation Osofia, the covert mission that transformed Russia into a nuclear and space superpower almost overnight. What you're about to discover will shake everything you thought you knew about the Cold War. While history books love to tell us about America's Operation Paperclip, they conveniently skip over the Soviet operation that was 3 times larger, more ruthless, and arguably more consequential for the modern world. I'm about to take you inside one of the most audacious intelligence operations in human history, a single night that changed the global balance of power forever. And here's the kicker. Most people have never even heard of it. The date was carefully chosen. October 22nd fell on a Tuesday night, when most German specialists would be home with their families. The Soviet intelligence apparatus, led by the infamous Lavrentiy Beria, had been planning this operation for months. Every detail was meticulously calculated. From the number of freight trains needed, exactly 92, to the precise timing that would catch their targets completely off guard. But let's rewind for a moment. Why were the Soviets so desperate to get their hands on German scientists and engineers? The answer lies in a brutal reality that Stalin understood better than most. The next war wouldn't be won with bullets and bayonets. It would be won with rockets, atomic bombs, and technologies that hadn't even been invented yet. Germany had spent the war years developing the most advanced military technology the world had ever seen. The V-2 rocket program, jet engines, nuclear research, advanced metallurgy, chemical weapons. The Third Reich had pushed the boundaries of human knowledge in pursuit of ultimate weapons. Now, with Germany defeated, this treasure trove of knowledge was up for grabs. Here's where the story gets fascinating. Most people know about Wernher von Braun and how he helped America reach the moon. But what they don't know is that for every von Braun that America got, the Soviets captured dozens of equally brilliant minds. The numbers are staggering. While Operation Paperclip brought about 1,600 German specialists to America over 14 years, Operation Osofia snatched more than 2,200 specialists, along with their entire families in a single night. The operation itself reads like something out of a spy thriller. Soviet units, coordinated by Colonel General Ivan Serov, simultaneously struck targets across the entire eastern zone. They didn't just take individuals, they took entire research facilities, complete with equipment, documentation, and every person who had worked there. It was industrial-scale intellectual kidnapping. Imagine being one of those German families. You go to bed thinking you're rebuilding your life in post-war Germany, and you wake up in a Soviet train heading to Siberia. Many of these families had no idea where they were going, or if they would ever see their homeland again. The Soviets had essentially pressed the reset button on these people's lives, forcing them to start over in a completely alien environment. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. It worked. Within just a few years, the Soviet Union went from being a technologically backward agrarian society to successfully testing their first atomic bomb in 1949. Just 4 years after the Americans, the same German scientists who had worked on Hitler's weapons programs were now creating the arsenal that would make the USSR a superpower. The rocket program is perhaps the most dramatic example. While America struggled with early rocket failures, the Soviets were launching Sputnik in 1957, putting Yuri Gagarin in space in 1961, and generally dominating the early space race. This wasn't Soviet ingenuity alone. This was German rocket technology and expertise, forcibly transplanted to Russian soil. One of the most remarkable aspects of Operation Osofia was how completely it was covered up. Unlike Operation Paperclip, which eventually became public knowledge, the Soviet operation remained classified for decades. The families taken in 1946 were forbidden from discussing their experiences. Many of the German specialists were kept in isolation for years, working on secret projects they couldn't talk about even among themselves. The psychological impact on these displaced families was enormous. Children who were taken as babies grew up speaking Russian, knowing nothing of their German heritage. Parents watched their children become Soviet citizens, while they remained perpetual foreigners in a hostile land. Yet from this human tragedy emerged some of the most significant technological advances of the 20th century. But the operation had consequences that went far beyond technology transfer. It fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Cold War. Without Operation Osofia, would the Soviet Union have been able to compete with America's military might? Would the Cold War have even happened? The captured German expertise gave Stalin the confidence to challenge American hegemony directly. The irony is almost too perfect to believe. The same Nazi scientists who had terrorized the world were now split between the two emerging superpowers, each using German knowledge to threaten the other. It was the ultimate example of how victory in war isn't just about defeating your enemy. It's about capturing their capabilities and turning them to your own advantage. What's particularly striking is how differently the two operations were conducted. America's Operation Paperclip was bureaucratic, methodical, and relatively voluntary. Scientists like von Braun came to America because they wanted to continue their work and avoid Soviet capture. The Soviet operation was the complete opposite: brutal, efficient, and entirely involuntary. Yet in many ways, it was more successful in terms of sheer numbers and immediate results. The human cost, however, was enormous. Families were separated for years. Children grew up not knowing their fathers, who were working on secret projects in remote Soviet facilities. The psychological trauma of forced displacement affected generations. These weren't just statistics. These were real people whose lives were completely upended for geopolitical gain. Yet from the Soviet perspective, Operation Osovyachim was an unqualified success. It rapidly closed the technology gap with the West, provided the foundation for the Soviet nuclear program, and established the USSR as a credible rival to American power. Stalin had essentially bought himself a generation of technological advancement overnight. The operation also reveals something crucial about the nature of technological progress. Innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It's built on the accumulated knowledge of previous generations. The German rocket program built on earlier work by Konstantin Tsiolkovsky and Robert Goddard. American and Soviet advances were built on German foundations. Technology, it turns out, is a global heritage that transcends national boundaries. Looking at the long-term consequences, Operation Osovyachim helped create the bipolar world that defined the second half of the 20th century. Without the rapid Soviet technological advancement enabled by captured German expertise, the Cold War might have looked very different. America might have enjoyed uncontested technological superiority, potentially preventing the arms race that followed. But there's another angle to this story that's often overlooked. The German scientists who were taken to the Soviet Union weren't passive victims. Many of them adapted to their new circumstances and made genuine contributions to Soviet science and technology. They trained a new generation of Soviet engineers and scientists, passing on not just technical knowledge but scientific methodology and innovative thinking. Some of these displaced Germans even came to identify with their adopted homeland. They raised Soviet children, contributed to Soviet society, and helped build the infrastructure that sustained the USSR through the Cold War. In a strange twist of history, Nazi scientists helped create the socialist superpower that would become America's greatest rival. The operation also highlights the brutal pragmatism of Cold War politics. Both sides were willing to overlook the wartime activities of German scientists if it gave them a military advantage. Former SS officers worked alongside Jewish survivors. Nazi engineers collaborated with Communist Party officials, and war criminals were given new identities if their knowledge was valuable enough. This moral ambiguity persists today. We celebrate the American moon landing without always acknowledging the Nazi origins of the rocket technology that made it possible. We admire Soviet space achievements while ignoring the forced labor and human rights violations that contributed to them. The legacy of Operation Osovyachim forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about progress, morality, and the price of technological advancement. What makes this story even more compelling is how it's been almost completely erased from popular consciousness. Everyone knows about the space race. Everyone knows about the nuclear arms race. But very few people know about the covert operation that made both possible. It's a reminder that the most important events in history are often the ones that happen in secret, away from public scrutiny. The families affected by Operation Osovyachim carried their secrets for decades. Many never spoke publicly about their experiences, taking their stories to the grave. It's only in recent years, as Cold War archives have been opened and survivors have begun to speak out, that we're starting to understand the full scope and impact of this operation. But perhaps the most important lesson from Operation Osovyachim is about the nature of power in the modern world. Military might isn't just about having the biggest army, it's about having the best technology, the smartest scientists, and the most innovative engineers. Stalin understood this intuitively, which is why he was willing to uproot thousands of families to acquire the knowledge he needed. Today, as we watch China's rise as a global superpower, we can see echoes of the same strategy. Technology transfer, intellectual property acquisition, and the recruitment of foreign talent are still central to geopolitical competition. The methods may have evolved, but the fundamental principle remains the same. Knowledge is power, and those who possess it shape the world. So what do you think about this hidden chapter of history? Are you surprised that such a massive operation could remain secret for so long? How do you feel about the moral compromises made by both sides in their pursuit of technological supremacy? And what does this tell us about the true nature of the Cold War? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you heard of Operation Osovyachim before? Do you think the ends justified the means? And what other secret operations from this era do you think shaped our modern world? If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering hidden stories from history that will change how you see the world. Trust me, there are plenty more secrets where this came from, and you won't want to miss them. The next time you look up at the International Space Station or read about nuclear deterrence, remember the German families who were torn from their homes on that October night in 1946. Their sacrifice, willing or not, helped create the modern world we live in today, and their story is finally being told. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.